A 13-year-old girl walks into a motorcycle club compound with a torn backpack, a swollen lip, and a photograph from a war her father never came home from. Not really. What she asks these battle-hardened bikers will change everything. Because sometimes the fight doesn't end when the shooting stops. The compound sat at the edge of town where the asphalt crumbled into gravel and the noise of civilization faded into the hum of distant engines. It wasn't much to look at. A squat building with peeling paint, a chain-link fence decorated with rust, and a hand-painted sign that read Black Arrows MC in letters that had seen better decades. Out front, 3 bikers lounged against their Harleys, cigarettes dangling, their laughter carrying across the empty lot. Then she appeared, a girl, maybe 13, with dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail and a backpack that looked like it had survived a war of its own. One strap was torn, barely holding. Her jeans were scuffed at the knees, and when she got close enough, they could see her lip, swollen on one side, the purple blue of a fresh bruise spreading across her cheek like spilled ink. The laughter died. She stopped at the gate, small hands gripping the chain link, and looked directly at the nearest biker, a broad-shouldered man with a gray beard and more scars than tattoos. "I need to talk to whoever was with my dad in Fallujah," she said. Her voice didn't waver. It should have, but it didn't. The man, call sign Wrench, blinked. "Kid, this ain't. My dad's name is Daniel Russell. Sergeant Daniel Russell, Marine Corps, 2nd Deployment, 2004. She said it like she'd rehearsed it 100 times. Maybe she had. "Someone here saved his life. I need to talk to them." Wrench exchanged glances with the others. One of them, a younger guy with sleeve tattoos, stepped forward. "How'd you find us?" "He still has the photo. You're all in it." That changed things. Wrench pulled out his phone, thumbed a quick message, and within minutes, boots were hitting concrete inside the clubhouse. The door swung open and out stepped Reaper, vice president of the Black Arrows, 6'3" of muscle and bad decisions, with eyes that had seen things most people only had nightmares about. He'd earned his road name in Fallujah, pulling wounded Marines from situations that should have killed everyone involved. He looked at the girl, then at Wrench. "Talk." Natalie didn't wait for an invitation. She unzipped her backpack, slowly, carefully, like she was handling something sacred, and pulled out a photograph protected by a plastic sleeve. She held it up to the fence. Reaper's expression shifted, just slightly, but enough. In the photo, 4 men stood in desert camouflage under a merciless Iraqi sun, dust on their faces, rifles slung, and in the center, younger and cleaner than he was now, stood Sergeant Daniel Russell, grinning like he'd just survived the impossible. To his left, Reaper, though his hair was darker then. To his right, Big Benson before the limp and the gray. And kneeling in front, Buck, always the medic, always the one holding things together. "He told me about you," Natalie said quietly. "When I was little, before everything got bad. He said you pulled him out of a burning Humvee. Said he wouldn't be here without you." She paused, her jaw tightening. "But now he's drinking. Every night. The drinking turns to yelling. The yelling turns to—" She touched her swollen lip, then dropped her hand quickly, like she'd revealed too much. The air went still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Big Benson emerged from the clubhouse, leaning on his cane, a souvenir from an IED that had ended his service but not his fight. He took one look at the photo and his face went pale. "Danny Russell. Haven't heard that name in years." "He stopped answering calls," Buck added, appearing beside him. He was smaller, wiry, with hands that still moved like a medic's, precise, careful. "Moved his family out to—" "Where was it?" "Here," Natalie said. "We've been here for 3 years. He doesn't talk about the Marines anymore. Doesn't talk about anything, really, except when he's drunk. Then he talks too much." Her voice cracked, just slightly, and she hated herself for it. "I didn't know where else to go." The The school counselor says it's complicated. My mom says he's sick. But I remember what he used to say, that you never leave a brother behind. She looked directly at Reaper. So I'm asking, please, he needs you again. Reaper reached through the fence and took the photograph. His thumb traced the faces of 4 young men who had no idea what was coming. Where's your old man now, kid? Home. Probably passed out on the couch. Your mom? At work. She works doubles most days. I think she's scared to come home. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Every man standing there knew what war leaves behind. The weight never went away. Some days you just learned to stand under it better. Some managed. Others didn't. And Daniel Russell, it seemed, had stopped running and started drowning instead. Reaper handed the photo back. You got an address? Natalie rattled it off from memory. Go home. Stay with your mom tonight if you can. We'll handle this. What are you going to do? Reaper's expression was unreadable. What we should have done a long time ago. The knock came at 9 p.m., firm but not threatening. Daniel Russell sat up from the couch, his head pounding, the empty whiskey bottle on the coffee table a silent witness to another wasted Sunday. He wasn't expecting anyone. Linda was still at the hospital finishing her shift, and Natalie was supposed to be in her room doing homework. He stumbled to the door, annoyed, ready to tell whoever it was to get lost. But when he opened it, the words died in his throat. 5 men stood on his porch. Leather cuts, graying beards, eyes that had seen the same hell he had. And in the center, holding that damned photograph like an accusation, was Reaper. Hello, Danny. Daniel's knees nearly buckled. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Shame crashed through him with a force no IED had ever matched. The kind that burned from the inside out and left nowhere to hide. These men had pulled him from fire and metal, had carried him when he couldn't walk, had promised to stay brothers long after the uniform came off. And he'd vanished, changed his number, moved states, buried himself so deep in his own wreckage that he forgot there were people who'd once refused to let him die. We gonna do this on the porch? Or you gonna invite us in? Big Benson's voice was the same, gravel and warmth. Daniel stepped aside. They filed in, taking in the scene without judgment. The bottles, the stale air, the photographs on the wall from a life that felt like someone else's. Buck moved to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, and set it in front of Daniel without a word. Reaper placed the photograph on the table. She remembered. You forgot. Daniel stared at the image. 4 men, brothers. A lifetime ago. I didn't forget, he said finally, his voice raw. I just couldn't. After everything, I couldn't be that guy anymore. The one you saved. I'm not him. No, Reaper agreed. You're not. That guy wouldn't let his kid walk into a biker compound with a busted lip looking for help. The words landed like a punch. Daniel's hands shook. I never meant. I don't remember doing that. I swear. I don't remember. That's the problem, brother. You're so drunk, you don't remember anything. The next morning, Big Benson showed up at 6 a.m. in a pickup truck that had seen better years but still ran like it had something to prove. He didn't ask permission, just leaned on the horn until Daniel emerged, squinting against the sun. Get in. Benson, I can't. Wasn't a question. They drove in silence to a community center on the east side, where a handwritten sign read, AA meeting Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 7 a.m. Daniel's stomach turned, but Benson didn't give him a chance to bail. He just parked, climbed out, and waited. Inside, plastic chairs formed a circle around people who looked like Daniel felt, worn down, hanging on, showing up anyway. Benson took a seat, nodded at a few familiar faces, and gestured to the empty chair beside him. Daniel sat. For the next hour, he heard his own demons spoken aloud by people he'd never met. The anger that came from nowhere, the gaps in memory, the look on their kids' faces. When it was his turn to speak, he couldn't. But Benson didn't push. just sat there, solid and present, the way he'd been in Fallujah when the world was exploding. Meanwhile, Buck had made his own visit to Linda Russell at the hospital cafeteria during her break. He introduced himself, showed her the photograph, and watched her eyes fill with tears she'd been holding back for years. "He talks about you sometimes," she said, "when he's sober. Says you were the best men he ever knew." "We should have looked harder for him," Buck admitted. "Should have known something was wrong when he went quiet." Linda wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I've thought about leaving, packing Natalie's things and just going. But every time I get close, I see flashes of who he used to be. The man I married. The father she deserves." She looked up. "Can you really help him?" "We're going to try. But Linda, you need to protect yourself and your daughter. If things escalate." "I know." Her voice was steady. "I've already looked into restraining orders. I wanted to give him one more chance." Buck slid a business card across the table. "This is a lawyer. Veteran-friendly. Won't charge you. And this," he added a second card, "is a crisis hotline. 24 hours. You call if you need anything. And I mean anything." That same week, Natalie found herself in the Black Arrow's garage, surrounded by tools, motorcycle parts, and the sharp scent of motor oil. Cherry, the club's operations manager and the only woman wearing a full patch, stood before a heavy bag, wrapping her hands with practiced efficiency. "Your dad teach you how to fight?" Cherry asked. Natalie shook her head. "Good. Most men teach their daughters to be small, to apologize, to take up less space." She tossed Natalie a pair of training gloves. "I'm going to teach you the opposite." For an hour, Cherry taught her stance, breath control, and how to throw a punch that started in the hips and carried real weight. Cherry was clear. This wasn't about hurting anyone. This was about Natalie remembering she had a right to feel safe in her own skin. "You walked into our compound alone," Cherry said, holding the bag steady as Natalie struck. "That took guts. Don't lose that. Whatever happens with your old man, you remember, you're stronger than you think." But strength, Natalie was learning, didn't make things easier. Because 3 days into Daniel's new routine, he missed a meeting. Then another. Big Benson showed up anyway, knocking until Daniel answered, eyes red and reeking of whiskey. "I can't do this," Daniel slurred. "I'm too far gone." Benson didn't argue, didn't lecture, just looked at him with those steady eyes. "Then I'll see you tomorrow." And he did, every single day. It happened on a Tuesday, just when Linda had started believing things might actually get better. Daniel had stayed sober longer than he had in months. The tremors had faded. Clarity was creeping back in. He'd made every meeting with Big Benson. He'd even had dinner with his family, really present for the first time in years, telling Natalie about a repair job he'd landed at the veteran's auto shop Buck had connected him with. Then something shifted. A phone call from an old Marine buddy who didn't make it as far as Daniel had. A funeral he couldn't afford to attend. A reminder that survival wasn't the same as living. By nightfall, Daniel was 3 bottles deep and spiraling. Linda came home to find him in the garage, surrounded by his old deployment gear. Helmet, boots, letters he'd written but never sent. He was crying, ugly and raw, talking to ghosts only he could see. She'd seen this before. It always ended the same way. "Danny, please, come inside. Let me call Buck." "I don't need Buck." His voice cracked the air like thunder. "I don't need any of them. They don't know what it's like, living with this, every single day, wanting to disappear and being too much of a coward to actually do it." Natalie appeared in the doorway, small and terrified. "Dad, go to your room," Daniel roared, and something in his eyes was so far gone that Linda stepped between them instinctively, protectively. That's when the motorcycles arrived. 6 Harleys rolled up the driveway, engines cutting simultaneously. Reaper dismounted first, followed by Big Benson, Buck, and 3 other patched members. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Porch lights flicked on up and down the street. Daniel staggered out of the garage, rage and shame twisting his features. "You got no right. This is my house. My family. Your family called us," Reaper said evenly. Linda had Buck's number on speed dial now, and she'd used it the moment Daniel started breaking. "So what, you're here to save me again? Play hero." Daniel's laugh was bitter. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of you to show up and your daughter asked." Buck's voice cut through the night. "She's 13 years old, and she walked into our compound alone because her father, her hero, had become the thing she was most afraid of." The words hit like a rifle shot. Daniel stumbled back against his truck. "You think you're the only one drowning?" Reaper stepped forward, close enough that Daniel could see the scars, the wear, the damage. "Like you've got exclusive rights to this kind of hell? I wake up at 3 in a cold sweat. Haven't slept through a night in years. I see faces of men I couldn't save. I hear screams that aren't there. And some nights, brother, I sit in my garage with my service pistol and wonder if anyone would even notice if I didn't show up the next day." The street had gone silent. Even the crickets seemed to be listening. "You want to know what keeps me going?" Reaper's voice dropped to something raw and unsteady. "It's knowing that at 3 in the morning, when the walls close in, I can pick up the phone. Someone will answer. Someone else is awake too, fighting the same fight. They'll stay on the line until sunrise if that's what it takes." He paused, letting the weight settle. "You had that, Danny. You had brothers who would have answered. But you cut the line. Decided to fight this alone. That's when you started losing." Daniel's legs gave out. He dropped to the driveway, head in his hands, the gravel biting into his knees. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to be the man I was." "You can't be." Big Benson lowered himself down beside Daniel, his bad leg protesting the movement. "That man's gone. The war saw to that. But what's left of us, that gets to choose what comes next. You can become someone your daughter doesn't have to be afraid of." From the porch, Natalie watched through tears. Cherry had arrived on her own bike, standing beside the girl, a protective hand on her shoulder. "Your dad's sick," Cherry said quietly. "But sick isn't the same as gone. Watch." Reaper extended his hand. Daniel stared at it, calloused, scarred, steady. The same hand that had dragged him from burning metal 20 years ago. The same hand offering to pull him from a different kind of fire now. He took it. Inside the house, Linda had made coffee. The bikers filled the small living room, their presence somehow both overwhelming and comforting. Buck laid out pamphlets, intensive outpatient programs, veterans therapy groups, medication-assisted treatment options. Not suggestions, requirements. "Here's how this works," Reaper said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "You do 90 meetings in 90 days. You see the therapist Buck's setting up. You take whatever meds they prescribe. And every single day, one of us checks in. You don't get to disappear this time." Daniel looked at Linda, who stood with her arms crossed, exhausted but hopeful. Then at Natalie, whose eyes held something he hadn't seen in years. Not fear, but belief. "And if I mess up again, then we show up again," Big Benson said simply. "That's what brothers do." Linda spoke, her voice steady despite the tears. "But Danny, if you hurt her again, if you hurt either of us, they won't be the ones you deal with. I'll take Natalie and you'll never see us again. This is your last chance. Our last chance." The weight of it settled over the room. Daniel nodded slowly, understanding finally breaking through the fog. Okay, I'll do it. Whatever it takes." Reaper stood, placing the photograph on the coffee table. 4 young men who'd survived the impossible. "You saved my life in Ramadi, covered me when I was pinned down. I never forgot that. Now it's my turn. We're not giving up on you, brother. Don't give up on yourself." The beginning was hell, the kind that made every hour feel like survival. Daniel's hands shook so badly that Buck had to help him sign the intake forms at the VA outpatient clinic. The nightmares got worse before they got better. His therapist said that was normal, that he'd been self-medicating for so long that his brain didn't remember how to process trauma sober. Some mornings, Big Benson would arrive to find Daniel sitting on the front steps at 5 a.m., unable to go back inside, unable to face another minute of his own thoughts. But Benson never left. He'd just sit beside him, two broken veterans watching the sun come up, until Daniel was ready to try again. The meetings became routine. 90 meetings sounded impossible until Daniel stopped counting days, started counting hours instead. Eventually just focused on breathing through the next 60 seconds. Daniel started recognizing faces, learning names. There was Marcus, a Gulf War vet who'd lost his family before finding his way back. There was Jennifer, a former Army nurse whose hands still shook when she talked about triage. They didn't judge. They just understood. Somewhere in the second month, something shifted. Daniel started talking in meetings. He shared a sentence in one meeting, a memory in another. Small pieces that started forming something real. The job Buck had arranged turned out to be more than just work. Martinez Auto Repair was run entirely by veterans, men who understood that some days you needed to focus on carburetors and transmissions because thinking about anything else would break you. The owner, a Vietnam vet named Carlos, had a simple rule. You show up on time, you work hard, and nobody asks about your bad days unless you want to talk. Daniel didn't want to talk, but the work itself spoke to him. Engines disassembled, problems diagnosed, parts restored. He could still fix things, even if one of those things wasn't himself yet. At home, things thawed slowly. Linda didn't flinch anymore when Daniel moved too quickly. Her phone stayed on the nightstand now, not clutched in her hand with Buck's number ready to dial. She started leaving for work without that knot of dread in her stomach, wondering what she'd come home to. Natalie was more cautious. She'd learned not to trust good days, because they'd always been followed by bad ones. But Cherry kept working with her, kept reminding her that healing wasn't linear. Not for her and not for her father. "He's trying," Cherry said one afternoon, wrapping Natalie's hands for another session. "That's worth something. But you don't owe him forgiveness on anyone's timeline but your own." Natalie nodded, striking the heavy bag with more confidence than she'd had weeks ago. "I know. I miss having a dad. The real one. Not the drunk one, not the angry one. Just Dad." "Then tell him that." That night, Daniel came home from work to find Natalie sitting at the kitchen table, homework spread out in front of her. He'd been keeping his distance, giving her space, terrified of saying or doing the wrong thing. But something about the way she looked up, nervous but determined, made him pause. "Can you help me with this?" she asked quietly, pointing to a math problem. "You used to be good at this stuff. It was such a small thing." Daniel's throat tightened as he pulled out a chair and sat beside his daughter, close enough that she could ask for help if she needed it. They worked through the problems together, and when Natalie got one right, she smiled, tentative, fragile, but real. "I'm sorry," Daniel said suddenly, the words escaping before he could stop them. "For everything. For making you scared. For making you have to be the brave one." Natalie was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Cherry says you're sick, that it's not your fault. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt." "I know. And she says you're getting better, that you're trying." "I am. Every day. I swear to you, Nat, I'm trying." She looked at him with eyes too old for 13. "Then keep trying. Because I want my dad back." By the time spring arrived, months after Natalie had walked through that compound gate, the Black Arrows held their annual memorial ride, a procession through town to honor fallen veterans, ending at the memorial park where names were carved into black granite. It was the club's most sacred event, and this year, they'd invited Daniel to ride. Not on a bike, he didn't have one anymore, had sold it years ago for drinking money. But in the support van, alongside other vets and their families, carrying the flags and wreaths that would be placed at the memorial. Linda and Natalie came too. Daniel wore his old Marine